Gary is a licensed mortician with 17 years of experience. He also teaches at Cypress College and North Orange Continuing Education with a career that blends hands-on work in funeral homes and teaching in the Mortuary Science and Funeral Service Assistant Certificate program. Gary brings a well-rounded and insight perspective to the field. Please join me in welcoming Gary. Gary, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you, Lori, and thank you for having me today. It really is an honor when I get to come and speak about what I do, and say a little bit about myself. This is how I got started pretty much doing this stuff, was doing small public speaking events. So there isn't a big importance. I appreciate the library system. I'm a fan of the library myself here where I live. So I really appreciate the opportunity that I have today. I'll go ahead and get started. I did prepare a PowerPoint just to kind of have a flow through the presentation, and it also should be available for those that would like it because there is a lot of information in there. It's over 40 slides, and I could talk a lot, and I'm limited in time. So, but there are resources on there. My information's on there, and however you choose to go about using that information, I appreciate it. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. And I'm going to start from the most boring part of my presentation, which is about me. Just to introduce myself so you guys know a little bit about who I am and what I do. I titled this series myself called Meet the Mortician. Um, that's me. So real quick, starting off with me, it says right there, that's me. Gary Ojeda says Mortician and Balmer Funeral Director. I am licensed in the state of California as both an embalmer and funeral director, which makes me a mortician. I received my associate's degree in mortuary science from Cypress College. I also received my bachelor's there in funeral service from Cypress College, and I went ahead and got my master's at Marian University in thanatology. And thanatology might seem a little unfamiliar to some, but pretty much what it is, it's the study of death and dying and all the aspects of that. So it could be psychological, spiritual, medical, all those things dealing with death. Recently, I got my certification as a grief counselor, so I'm utilizing that. I'm also an adjunct faculty member, like Lori mentioned, at both Cypress College and NOCE, which we'll get into later. I volunteer at a grief support group as a leader there. I've been doing that for a couple years. And I also, on top of all these things, I'm a full-time embalmer at Rose Hills Mortuary and Memorial Park in Whittier, California. And I've been there for almost 18 years. It'll be 18 years in February. So that's pretty much what I do. At the bottom, I also put trade embalmer as an independent contractor. And I can go into that a little bit more, but what that is, I work independently and I go to different mortuaries to embalm or whatever it is they need me to do. And I work that separately. The next slide you see, it's also about me. It says Gary Ojeda, father, husband, and human, because those are also the things I am besides a mortician, right? I have three children, Cora, Luke, and David. I'm married. I'm very much into art and being creative. I enjoy music. Recently, we've been going through and listening to a lot of vinyl records, so that's kind of been fun. I do enjoy yoga. Um, I'm sure the librarians are happy to hear that I'm into audiobooks. Once I got my master's, I kind of swore off on regular books because for some reason, every time I pick up a book now, I fall asleep. But audiobooks are great. So that's kind of my new thing. I do enjoy cooking. Obviously, we have to eat. And so I enjoy cooking. I've been doing that my whole life. You see all the things I do and all the hobbies I have. But one of my most important things to do is spending time with my family because obviously I'm left with just a little bit of time. So spending time with my family is a big part of my day. And naps. Naps, I don't know if I want to say they're underrated, but they're definitely necessary in a busy lifestyle. So those are the things that I enjoy. I'm going to get started going through a little bit about my journey. And as you can see, I kind of have it in picture form, and I'll go ahead and describe it. So back in 2000 let's say 7 or around there, I actually started at Rose Hills as a florist. That was my profession before I entered the mortuary business. So I was a floral designer, and as you can see in the next little picture, that you see the actual casket spray. I used to make things like that, funeral flowers. And one day, someone that was working in the mortuary came up to me and told me, "Hey, I think you have a good eye. You should work upstairs." And I said, "Well, what's upstairs?" And they said, "Oh, the mortuary. Like you should work on, you should be an embalmer. You should go to mortuary school." And that's exactly what I did. At that time, I wasn't really. I was going to school. I had a lot of credits. I wasn't really knowing what I was going to do. I just figured, hey, I'm a florist. That's cool. Um, so I went to mortuary school. I enrolled at Cypress College, and I started the program there. It was really interesting, very enjoyable learning experience because what I was learning about was interesting. And so I graduated from Cypress College in 2008, and since I was already working at Rose Hills as a florist part time, I started while I was in school. I started working part time also for the mortuary side. So when I was at Cypress College, I had I was already kind of doing things in the field, and it was just kind of fueling my passion to continue. Luckily enough, when I graduated from Cyprus, I was able to land my apprenticeship, and we'll go a little bit more into what an embalming apprenticeship is. But that's pretty much the position that we desire when we go into mortuary school. You want to go to mortuary school, you graduate, you become an embalmer, and the apprenticeship is the beginning. And we'll go through that more through the presentation. So you see in the next little slide, you can see kind of like a prep room table, and that was me going through my journey of being an embalmer. Uh, Being that Rose Hills is one of the largest mortuaries in the United States, we serve more families because it's a cemetery and a mortuary combo and a crematory. So since it's such a large operation, we serve more families than any other mortuary in the country. So very high volume, um, very corporate, but I did a lot of good work there. For your embalming apprenticeship, you have to embalm 100 cases, decedents or bodies, those are the terms we use, in 2 years. In 2 years, I embalmed uh, almost 400. So you could see how busy we were and how much that was part of my experience. And so I was there happily embalming. It's a great job, full time. I work a 4 on, 4 off schedule, meaning I work 4 days and I get 4 days off. We work 10-hour days. Our operation at Rose Hills is 24/7. So we have different shifts, different people coming in, different jobs, and so on. And it's a great place to work. And, being that I'm local to Rose Hills, my family's buried there. I have friends buried there. Um, Most likely, at some point, I will be there myself. Not hopefully not too soon from now. Um, and then if you look at the bottom row, you see some books. So what that's signifying is in 2017, I believe, when Cypress College they piloted the first bachelor program, and that's something we've seen statewide now. Is we're seeing a lot more junior colleges offer bachelor programs. Well, Cypress was lucky enough to offer a Bachelor of Science in Funeral Service. So I jumped on that because I didn't have a bachelor's at the time, and it was also a great experience. The bachelor degree doesn't really do anything for me besides giving me the ability to say I have my bachelor's, and it was actually the way I was able to obtain my master's. So I was one of the first class I was in the first class that received their bachelor's at that school. So that was a big step for me. And once I got that going, I didn't stop because my goal was to become a professor, and that's still my goal now. And I'm kind of living it, but as you see, I'm juggling a few things. So um, you see, the next stack of books got significantly more increased, and that's signifying my master's. I did my master's at Mary University. It's an online program. It's actually a Catholic school. There's not many schools that offer degrees in thanatology, and I chose thanatology because it was the closest degree or school of philosophy that fit my career as a mortician. All the other masters I was looking at was like forensic science or, healthcare management, and it didn't really speak to me as much as thanatology did. So I went ahead, I pursued that. Um, and pursuing a master's is pretty difficult. It took me 3 years. They only recommend taking like one class at a time, so that's what I did because it's expensive to get your master's, and you don't want to mess up, and you have to do good work. So it took me a while, but I did it. Um, and upon being in the master's program and graduating, that allowed me to be an adjunct faculty member. And that's when I also started that part of my career. And that's why you see the Cypress College again, because I went back to Cypress where I became an adjunct professor, and I've taught many different subjects. I started off in the embalming lab because Cypress College, we do have, currently at the moment, we don't have it, but historically we've always had an on campus lab, and this lab is a prep room, and we embalm there, and we teach students how to embalm. So that's where I started. I started off in the embalming lab, working with students, teaching them embalming practices. Um, During that time, I was really lucky to have a lot of opportunities to teach multiple subjects. For instance, like I mentioned, embalming, I actually taught thanatology, which was probably one of the best experiences because that's what I was just fresh out of the master's program learning. And that was really a great experience for me. And that was in-person lecture. I also went on to teach law. Um, I've substituted in many different other classes like restorative arts, where we learn about cosmetics and restoring people's natural features upon when they die. I went on to substitute for um, biology classes and anything and everything that Cypress wanted to offer me. I took because that's just where I wanted to be. Then you see the next little slide. You see that big tall building. That's actually our NOCE campus in Anaheim. That building's nice, but I teach online, so I don't really go to that building. But I still do that concurrently with everything else. I started that back in 2020, so I've been there for about 5 years. The program I teach is completely online, and it's a funeral service certificate program, and we'll get into that as well. And that's pretty much where I'm at. I'm still an adjunct at Cypress. I'm still an adjunct at NOCE, although I primarily teach at NOCE every semester. Currently, this semester, I'm teaching 4 courses. Um, the certificate program was created by myself and the administration, so the classes I teach were constructed by me and with our administration, and it's kind of like my little baby. Like it's something that I'm the only faculty that teaches it. I'm the only faculty that is in my own department. So it's kind of the thing that I'm most proud of. And we work alongside with Cypress now to help them kind of be a gateway, and we'll go into that more. So just one more slide, continuing my journey, and this kind of is like what I look like right now, right? I have Rose Hills going on, which I still do. I have Cypress, NOCE. You see the grief share there. That's my volunteer work. I A few years ago, I think I'm in my third year now. I started doing volunteer work at a local church for in it's a grief support group. We meet every Mondays, and the program is called Grief Share. It's a Christian based grief support group, and it's been a really great opportunity for me because my whole career I've been working with the deceased, and now I'm working with the people that are left behind when those people die, and it's a whole different uh, kind of career and kind of job, but it's what my background is as far as educational. And you can see as the next arrow, I just got certified as a grief counselor, and that I got certified as a grief counselor because of my education in thanatology. So that was a really cool thing to obtain, and like I said, it kind of rounds out my experience. It rounds out what I've been doing these past few years. And then the next little slide you see, there's a bunch of question marks. It's because I don't know. I don't know what's next. I'm working in a variety of different fields right now, being an embalmer, being an adjunct professor, volunteering as a grief share, and who knows what comes next. I'm looking at different opportunities all the time. Just today, I was onboarded to a law group for a witness expert in embalming. So anytime any legal cases come up, and let's say there's attorneys that need witness experts for embalming, I'm now on board with one law group for that. And wouldn't you know, the same time that I signed up for that, I got an email for another expert consultant business. So who knows what's the next step? I still have a passion. I still have a desire to teach full time. And, if that opportunity comes my way, I would take it. I'm also pursuing just other jobs in the industry that I could better utilize my talents. Um, Not that I don't enjoy being an embalmer. I love it. It's passionate, and also as an embalmer at Rose Hills, I do get to train employees. I do have students that work at Rose Hills, Cypress College students that work at Rose Hills, who I teach them through their embalming experience at Rose Hills. So I'm kind of fulfilling all these different desires and passions that I didn't necessarily knew I had at the beginning, but as I worked through, they became part of who I am today. And it kind of best sums up with the quote you see at the bottom from John Lennon. It says, "Life is what happens while you're busy other making plans." And this, I'm sure most of us understand that. We often set off with a certain set of goals or a certain set of things we want to do in our life, and we're busy doing it. And then before you know it, you're doing something different. And that's just life. That's life in general. Is just staying and going through experiences, and maybe sometimes you have the best intentions to do something, and maybe sometimes it doesn't end up that way, but it's okay as long as you stay passionate about what you want to do and continue to try your hardest to reach your goals. You'll eventually find out what your life is meant to be. And through all of this, it's really just a process. Even though I'm many years in my career and doing everything, there's still a process to the things I do. There's still a process in which everything happens. So the process for our career, what I tell people, it's called a vocational career. It means it calls to you. This is a career that most people don't wake up and say, "Hey, I'm just going to be a mortician today." You know, most people don't just have knowledge about what that is. Most people find out somehow, either through a loss of themselves from they've experienced, and they go, "Hey, I went to a mortuary and I seen a mortician, and I think I want to do that job." Or somehow or another, the job ends up calling to them. And so it's a very special kind of career where it's not for everybody, but yet everybody experiences what we go through. And for some people, really want to be a part of it, and those are the people that we usually find in school and pursuing everything else in the career. But what's part of the process when you want to enter the career, it's always best to figure out what do you want to do in this industry. It's a big industry. And just in there, you could see I kind of highlighted some concepts of our industry. The mortuary, like talking about maybe what I do, preparing bodies. Cremation, that's a big part of our industry now. Sales, you got to cemeteries have sales. Forensic science is part of the funeral service program, or not program, funeral service industry. There's also tissue donation. Think about people donating, their bodies, their body parts or body tissue to donation. That's also a part of our industry. And also education. That's probably one of the things I didn't think I would be able to do, and here I am doing it. And also grief support. Since we have the experience in being around people who are grieving, we end up kind of becoming semi-experts in it. So it's a very important part of our industry, and that's something that I can tell you firsthand. It's also important to know that when beginning this process of being a mortician, to be an embalmer, the embalmer's license is the only license that requires you to go to mortuary school. So all these other jobs that I mentioned, crematory, sales, forensics, tissue donation, education, grief support, you don't need an embalmer's license for. You don't need a mortuary science degree for. Um, it does. I'm not saying it doesn't help. It really will help. But just know that mortuary science school is basically to get your embalmer's license. It is required. Um, and what you would do is you would start off at any school. You want to, when we receive students in the mortuary science program, we expect them to already be pretty much done with their general education at a college level. So that way when they graduate, they can be awarded their associate's in science degree. Um, and whatever school you pick, make sure it's an accredited mortuary school. So in California, we only have two accredited mortuary schools, and that's at Cypress College, where I am, and that's in Cypress, California. And then we have American River, which some of you might be more know more about because it's closer to you guys up in where you're at. It's in Sacramento, I believe. It's called American River College. So those two programs are the only accredited mortuary school programs that you can receive mortuary science degrees from and receive your embalmer's license. So NOCE, the other school I teach at, is not accredited mortuary school. We offer a certificate, and I'll talk about our relationship with Cypress in a bit. So that's an important thing to find. There are maybe only, I think there's like 52 programs in the whole entire country that teach mortuary schools that teach mortuary science that are accredited. There are some online programs, but they're very few, and sometimes they have different requirements, but it is available out there. Um, Upon graduating, and you don't even actually need to graduate to start your apprentice. If you find a funeral home that will give you a full-time apprenticeship before you have school, that's legal. Is it practical? Maybe not, because you might not know what you're doing. So, but you are available to start your apprenticeship at any time. But in order to get licensed, you do need to have your mortuary science degree. So in California, our apprenticeship would be including passing the state exam. There is an embalmer's exam that you take to get licensed. Also passing one of our national board exams, the science portion. The 2 year full time apprenticeship is is what really seals, um, really gets your license going, because it's a 2 year apprenticeship full time, and then upon that time, that's when you have to embalm the 100 bodies, and that's just a number that they've came up with to, because like I mentioned before, at my high volume place, I exceeded it, and some mortuaries may not get that many a year, so 100 is about a fair number to do. Will you know everything there is to know at the end of your apprenticeship? Probably not, but you'll know enough to be a licensed embalmer, and you'll know enough to serve your community, and that's what's important. Embalming is one of those things where you never stop learning. And I can tell you that because I'm an instructor and I've learned things from students. So, and that's a really important aspect about our industry is, and I would say any industry, is if you want to be a professional, if you're passionate about what you do, then you always got to be a student in it. Because if you stop learning, you kind of means you stop moving, you become stagnant, and you won't be as beneficial to those around you. So I encourage you, no matter what career you do, to always be a student, always be learning. And upon your apprenticeship, you become licensed, you have your degree. The next step is to be fulfilled and know that you're helping out our society on the most feared and terrible aspects of our existence, and that's death. We live in a death denying society. We live in a society that where death is not something we want to talk about all the time, and only few of us are really able to work around it and handle it. So it is something to be proud of. It is something to embrace, and we'll learn more that as professionals in the industry, we have to be the advocates to promote what we do and bring it to the public and as something positive, as something respectful, right? Next slide. Continuing with the process, I have some links down there. So when anything cemetery or funeral related, you can always um, look up the California Department of Consumer Affairs, the Cemetery and Funeral Bureau, and they have all the information on licensing, what it takes. And I added some of the checklists there so you guys can see. It gives the actual um, definitions of funeral director and embalmer. And so in California, we're a duly licensed state, meaning we have a funeral director's license and we have an embalmer's license. In some parts of the country, they just have one license, and it's called a funeral director license. We have two. And if you look at the funeral director license portion, there's only three requirements. It's you got to be 18 or older. You got to possess an associate in arts or science, did not mortuary science, just any associate's degree, and not commit any acts or crimes constituting grounds for denial of licensure under some certain BPC codes. And then, of course, you fill out the application, take the test. The funeral director license is more what I think of as like a white collar license, meaning if you look under the definition, it's more. utilized for people that are operating locations. So if you every mortuary, every funeral home, every funeral establishment that's doing mortuary work has to have a funeral director present on site, has to have a funeral director that's licensed. Does that mean they're an embalmer? No, because none of these requirements say you have to be an embalmer, but you have to be a licensed funeral director. So not every mortician's a funeral director and embalmer in California, and not every embalmer is a funeral director because we do have two licenses. And then you see on the right, we have the embalming requirements, and this is a little bit lengthier. And this is where I tell you where it has, you have to go to school, you have to have your degree in mortuary science, you have to take, um, the IFCB examining board test, you have to pass the state embalmers test. So there's a little bit more having to do with that, and it gives you the details of the apprenticeship. So this is also part of the process. The good thing is when you go through mortuary school, we do help you with all these things, right? That's our goal, is to get you in your career. So part of our programs sometimes is to help students pass their funeral director's exam and get them ready to enter the career as an embalmer. Okay. So I spoke about the two schools that I teach at, Cypress College and NOC. Sorry, going too fast. And so sometimes people wonder, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between mortuary science and funeral service assistant certificate? So I kind of laid it all out there. Like I mentioned before, Cypress is a mortuary science program. They're accredited by the American Board of Funeral Service Education. And NOCE, we're not. We're a certificate program. We're actually a community college, so we don't, all our programs that we don't award degrees. We have like certificate programs. We do continuing education. So we have like, pharmacy tech. We have the new Google IT tech um, program, and it's all based around getting people a base knowledge of whatever industry they want to get in to help them get better jobs. Whereas junior colleges are more along the line for awarding degrees so people can further their education however they choose. Mortuary science, it's almost like a mini. So I remember when I was in school, they used to call it like a mini medical school because you learn about everything. You learn about embalming, law, history, accounting, pathology, thanatology. I mean, history. There was just so many things you learn about, and it's just all encompassing mortuary science. So it's a lot. It usually takes students 2 to 3 years to graduate. It's highly competitive in enrollment. I think this last semester we got like 175 people interested, willing to apply, and we only took 50. So, it is highly competitive. Um, it does require students upon entry to be affiliated with the mortuary that they're wherever they're located, to do some internships that are required, that are graduation requirements in the program. It is in person. It's not online. It's not a hybrid program. So it's also full time. So you see how hard it can be for students who one need to balance, let's say a working job where they get paid, and then they got to go to school full time, and then they got to do internships, and then they also got to just like live life because they're human. So it is kind of difficult and it is hard to balance, but it's very possible. It's very interesting to do, and we're making it the best experience we can to get students in and out into the career field. At NOCE, it's a free program, right? So it's free, and what's been great about our program is Cypress has been using it as what we call it, kind of like a gatekeeper. So a lot of the students that are entering mortuary science, they actually come to my intro class first, and what that does, it actually helps them get a few extra priority points into the program. So a lot of students right now that are in the program have already had me as an instructor. I invited my class today to come and listen. And so there might be even somebody who listens. I appreciate you guys' attendance. And the gatekeeper like terminology, it's also because sometimes people want to be in our industry, but they may not want to just enroll in mortuary school, and they want to kind of see what it's like first. So in a way, my program allows them to do that as well. It's a 3 to 4 semester program, depending on when you enter and how you enter. It's completely online, asynchronous. So I post the work, you come in, do the work. There's deadlines, and it's fairly simple. It's not meant to ruin anyone's day or anything like that, but it's enough to get you some base knowledge to get a job, a base level job, entry level job at a funeral home. The good thing about our class or the program is that if you earn the certificate, you can test out of 3 mortuary science classes at Cypress. And this is done by credit by examination. And that's important too. If you just remember what I just said, that it takes some students 2 to 3 years to graduate. So if you're able to go through my program and say you're waiting to get into the program and you take my classes, get your certificate, you have the ability upon entering mortuary school to test out of those 3 classes by examination. So there is a benefit to it. We have a great working relationship. The program has. I'm not the first one to teach this program. I just been doing it the last 5 years, and I had to start from scratch when I started it. So everything that I'm doing has been created by myself. But traditionally, the funeral service assistant program has always been taught by a mortuary science program, and it's still that way to this day because since I'm kind of both. So we have a good working relationship with Cypress, and we're just going to continue that. And another big benefit of the certificate program is I'm an instructor. I have good feedback with my students. I think what helps me a lot is the fact that I'm still active in the industry. So it's been really great because I've have students that I've started off with in NOCE, and I've seen them not have a job, come to NOCE, get a job, and then I've seen them go to Cypress, and then I'm their instructor at Cypress, and then they graduate from Cypress, and then I go to work, and now they're my coworkers, and now they're completing their career at Rose Hills with me. So I know it works because I've seen it firsthand. I have a lot of success stories. I work with a lot of my former students, and it's a good thing. And I'm proud of all of those that go through my courses because it's not something that everybody wants to do. So I really do appreciate their effort. Let's continue. So what do we do as an embalmer? This is kind of like what I do. So as an embalmer, our primary job is to preserve, sanitize, prepare human remains for funeral services through the process of injecting preservative chemicals, utilizing the arterial system, and draining through the venous system. So there are 2 different things. We inject through the arteries, and through the veins, we drain the blood. So, and through the fluid we use is formaldehyde, and it's a preservative, and it fixates the proteins in the body, which allows for that firming and disinfecting property. So embalming, it's important to know that it's not required by law. There's no law in California that says you must embalm, but mortuaries do have the right and the ability to require it for open casket public viewings. We're responsible, embalmers, we're the ones that are pretty much responsible for handling the deceased and getting them ready for cremations or direct burial. Most of the time at funeral homes, anyone processing human remains is going to be a mortician. This kind of preparation can include bathing, disinfecting orifices, setting features, everything like that. Let's see. Permission embalming has to be granted by the legal next of kin. That's really important because we need permission and it needs to be done legally. The next, our response continue that we are the caretakers for the legal, ethical, and compassionate treatment of everybody that enters our care. There's no special treatment. Everyone gets treated the same. We are responsible for doing all the aspects of our job in a safe and respectful manner to all others, decedents, and all those people we work with, and of course ourselves. Right, being safe is a big part. One of the things we teach also is living by the golden rule: is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Just as you would want, your loved one to be treated, or you yourself treated, as how we treat others. Okay. Some of my average day at work activities could include embalming, obviously being an embalmer, Dressing, cosmetizing, casketing decedents, usually that are embalmed. Preparing decedents for cremation and direct burials. Usually they're unembalmed because you don't need to be embalmed to be cremated or to be direct burial. Preparing decedents for ID purposes, making removals or first calls. This is actually picking up the decedent from their place of death or other places like residence, hospitals, convalescent homes, coroner office, medical examiner, other mortuaries, etc. Um, Also, me specifically, we dispatch personnel, so there is a computer component to work sometimes. I'm also updating computer logs and in-house logs regarding storage, embalming status, etc. Paperwork's a big part of our industry, making sure we have proper documents and they're all properly filled out and being recorded and stored in a proper manner. Disinterments, I work at a cemetery, so sometimes I have the responsibility to remove people from their grave and relocate them either in another grave, or sometimes people want to be cremated after they've been buried for 30 years, or whatever they choose, that's what we do. And cleaning everything, we have to keep a cleanly area. And I'm sorry if I'm going fast. I just kind of looking at the time and I'm realizing it's already 3:40. So, uh, and I don't know what slide we're on, but I'm sure there's a lot left to talk about. But just so we'll go quickly over things. Good traits for embalmers and funeral directors. Obviously, we have to be able to work in a biohazard environment. We deal with a lot of chemicals that are carcinogens, like formaldehyde and glutaraldehyde, and also we work along every bodily fluid that you could think of, from blood to, use your imagination. It takes us to be compassionate, empathetic, organized, time management. I mentioned before, artistic, creative. It's good to have leadership. It's good to work independently, have integrity, punctuality. And the one thing I want to highlight is soft skills. And I gave a little definition of what soft skills are. And this is also something that's really important for those seeking any kind of job, is to have soft skills. Hard skills are things that we could train you to do, like embalming. But soft skills are the things that we can't train. I can't train people to be good communicators or to work well in a team environment or to be flexible or to be problem solving or an active listener. So soft skills are important in any career in any industry, and it's something that now in our present time is highly regarded upon from employers. So make sure that's something that you guys work on as students or be mindful of upon anything you do. So how do we do it? People go, well, how do you do it? How do you do it? And the best way that I'm going to tell you, and I'm not saying I do all these things, but I can sure tell you how to do it. I'm not saying that I'm perfect at all these, but maintaining a healthy work and life balance, avoiding burnout. I'm sure those know what being burnt out is. It's an actual term. We also deal with something else called compassion fatigue. It happens a lot in the healthcare industry where people they're in a job where all they're doing is helping people who need things, and it kind of affects how they deal with people. They get fatigued in their compassion, and it affects them how they handle other people. So it's burnout's a real thing because once you know and once you're feeling burnt out, it's already too late. So it's important to balance your life and work. Know your limits physically and mentally. Embalmer is a physical job. We're on our feet. I'm on my feet 10 hours a day. I'm pulling, I'm lifting, I'm doing all these things. And also mentally, know your limits. Know what triggers you. Know what maybe is something you don't want to deal with. Put stay healthy and stay caffeinated, right? Stay healthy, drink water, eat healthy lunches, stay caffeinated. I'm not promoting caffeine, but it helps. Coffee's good, tea, whatever you prefer. Healthy habits. So when I mean habits, meaning, avoiding certain habits that could be harmful to your health. Obviously, like drinking, smoking, and stuff like that. We're not all perfect, and a lot of funeral directors do those things. But just try to be healthy in your habits. Really helps you mentally. Have healthy coping skills and mechanisms. So doing things that you enjoy, because in an environment like this, it's difficult sometimes. So have important coping skills and mechanisms. One thing I put in here is have a sense of humor. What we do is very heavy sometimes, and sometimes we have to be a little light in our personalities to kind of deal with things that are very difficult. And it falls along with the same point where I said find joy. That's kind of my philosophy. You got to kind of find joy in everything we do. And I mean that like even in our grief journey. That's something I teach even in my support groups. That even though this world has no uh, shortness, there's no shortage of sadness in this world, but there we do need to be able to find a little bit of joy in all the things we do, especially in a career that could get heavy at times. And then, like I mentioned before, always be a student and never stop learning. Here's some industry insights I can go over really quick. So it says, get ready for the boom. Right now, the aging baby boomers, they're the largest generation alive. They're entering their final stages of life, and some they already started dying. So they're that's going to cause an increase in our industry. So morticians, forensics, all these industries are going to need more people. And right now, we're already, according to government numbers and things like that, we're already understaffed in that situation. And we kind of felt that in the COVID era. It really changed our industry in a lot of ways. And I put there both seen and unseen, for the good and for bad. The one thing that that came out of the COVID era was that we figured out that, hey, we're essential and we're pandemic proof. We when COVID was a very difficult time for us, but we were one of the few people that were getting out there and going and working, and I was very grateful for that. We also feel that during this time, the astronomical numbers of death that we went through threw off our regular cycle of death. Meaning, um, this might be funny for you guys to know, or curious to know, is that we do have a busy season and a slow season. Right now, we're in our slow season. Summer is typically our slow season, and our busy season is the wintertime. And there's many factors that play into that, and sometimes we ourselves can't even understand why it happens. Sometimes, um, in the winter, if you think about it, there's more depression. The weather kind of changes people's moods. People are eating worse. I mean, there's all these things that we attribute to why the winter is harder for us and why we see more death. It's also flu season, so we see people kind of in poor health succumbing to that and dying. In the summer, it's people are a little bit more lively. They're running around. They're doing things. They're not really don't have the time to die. Let's say, right? But we see different kinds of deaths in the summer. We might see more homicides, or more accidentals, or more. The condition of the bodies tend to be a little bit worse because of the heat. It kind of speeds up decomposition. So there's different things we see throughout the year that have a cycle, and COVID threw it off for a little bit. For a while, we didn't really have our typical slow season, busy season, slow season. It was just kind of busy all the time. And I think this year, I can speak for most people and say we actually kind of had more of a traditional year. Where right now we're seeing we're not that busy right now, and that's good. And I'm sure in a few months we're going to be in another situation where we'll be busy again. And that's just traditionally how it's been for many, many years. One thing I really do want to share, because I didn't see who's in the chat, but I can probably guarantee you it's majority female, and it's a dominated industry. Most of our mortuary suits are female. It used to be male dominated up into the 90s. Now we see women in all aspects of the industry, including management and ownership. One of my good friends who I've worked with, she is um, a young lady who owns two, three different businesses, and she's just thriving in our industry, and she's doing a really great job. Also, we're trying to fight and work for more higher wages and salaries, which is why the bachelor degree was something important, because there is a correlation between higher education and financial compensation, meaning the more education you have, the more you get paid. So some people think, oh, the bachelor program, it's useless. You don't need it. Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. But if we ever want to get paid more, society tells us we need to have more education. So that's part of it. Um, our industry is home to many people that have second and third career types. So there's people who, oh, I used to be in sales, or I used to, work at Foot Locker, and now I'm a mortician. Like me, I used to be a florist. I used to work at a craft store, and now I'm a mortician. So we're the home of many people that have second and third career. So you know, don't feel like, oh, I can't get into mortuary science now. I work at Chipotle. No, you can still come and be a mortician. More diverse. So, are we seeing more diversity in our industry? Different ethnicities, religions, cultures, genders. neurodivergence, personalities, etc. I mean, we don't fit one mold, and I seen that. And that's something I'm really proud of. I work with people that are all different religions, cultures, and everything, and I'm proud to say that we are a pretty diverse industry. Because why? Because we help a society and a culture group that is very diverse, especially here in California. So it's good to be working around a lot of different people because guess what? We serve a lot of different people. I mentioned before, there is a growing need for morticians, not just morticians, but even more pathologists. So if there's any doctors in the room or people that want to be a doctor or go to medical school, if you really, really want to do something good for society, and if you really, really want to probably make a lot of money, go into pathology. It's not everyone's favorite. Everybody wants to birth babies and you know check out people's ears and things like that. But pathology is a great industry, and it's in dire need of pathologists. There's too many people who are retiring, and they don't have enough doctors to replace them. And this is a very important part of our industry because it involves the investigative part of why people die. So why does any of this matter, right? So it's important to know why a funeral is important. I mentioned before, I had to be advocates of that. Viewing the body, being present at the funeral helps with closure. That helps people understand and grasp the reality of the loss. Memorialization, it cultivates a healthy grieving process and relocating the loved one in your life because although that person's gone, they're not really gone because you still think about them. You still see things that remind you of them. So being able to relocate that person in another aspect of your life is how you move through your grief. So by having memorialization of somebody, it really creates that for you. And that's what cemeteries do. A lot of people think, oh, a cemetery is just a waste of land. Well, it's not. It gives people physical and intangible location to memorialize their loved one. Um, it, our funeral honors and celebrates life. It builds community support. I like this little thing. It's William E. Gladstone. He was a former British Prime Minister. And you could read the quote there. Show me the manner in which a nation or community cares for its dead, and I will measure with mathematical exactness the tender sympathies of its people, their respect for the laws of the land, and their loyalty to the high ideals. Meaning, the mathematical exactness of their tender sympathies, their dignity they have for the life of their people, their human compassion that they show towards their own people, their respect for the laws, the fact that we even have laws that tell us what to do and how to memorialize and how to bury someone shows that that's a respect for life itself, right? And the loyalty to these laws and to these tender sympathies, it shows that even in a simple act like memorializing someone's life or celebrating someone's passing, um, it's even in that little event we show how important and how dignified we are as humans. So there's a lot of importance of funerals. Another important part of just learning about grief psychology, William Word and Ford Task of Mourning. This is something that keep in back of your mind. This is practical psychology knowledge. These are the four tasks of what we should be accomplishing in mourning. And if you see, they're called tasks, meaning they're things we have to work through. So it's not just like, oh, I did one, two, three, and now I just got to do four and I'll be done. It's not always that way, but they are things that require work, like accepting the reality of loss. You must experience the pain of the grief, adjusting to the world without decease. And that's what I mentioned before about relocating that loved one in your life. It's adjusting your world. Because when we lose someone, unfortunately, as we know, our life goes on. It doesn't mean we move on, but our life goes on, and we have to learn to adjust our world without that person. It's also important to find an enduring connection with the deceased while moving forward. Once again, about relocating that loved one in our life. Our industry helps facilitate these experiences, and we have to be advocates for our own industry. Good grief, right? I always think of Charlie Brown when I say that. But just one thing I want you to realize, if you know anything about grief, is that it occurs with any kind of loss, not just death. It could be loss of health, job, relationships, things, anything. So we experience grief all the time. Unfortunately, the worst one we feel is probably having to do with death. But just know that when we do grieve, it's the echo of love. And that's something I hear all the time, especially being in grief support. We grieve because we have love and attachment to that thing or to that person. So it's a natural human experience, and it's something we're all going to go through. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, you can do your own research on her, but she was one of the first people to come up with 5 stages of grief, and it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And I put an asterisk. These are not all necessarily experienced in order. So you're not going to first start off with denial and then anger. Sometimes people start off right off with depression, and or they start off with anger and they go back to denial. Then they go to bargaining and they get acceptance. They go back to denial. It's not linear. It's cyclical. So sometimes it doesn't always go that way, but that's kind of the best way that we can define it. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was one of the pioneers in that. And also to know, when it comes to grief, what is normal, what is abnormal, if you really compare them, they look very similar. So the difference actually in our grief is sometimes the longevity or the effect that the grief has on our basic functions. So, because me studying this for as long as I have, you look and like, wow, these, if you put the things together, they look very similar. But it's all about how it affects your life and the basic functions. And sometimes that correlates with the longevity of such grief. Oh, Mortician Mythbusters. This is a good one. There's a bunch of these. I created this little document um, when I first started doing speaking. I do all kinds of speaking. Just this past year, I did my son's career day at his school, and that was pretty cool because I was in front of like 700 students that range from like 6 years old to like 11 years old, and I had to go up there and discuss with them what I do as a mortician. So that was really fun. I've done many career days. I do guest speaking at some of the local colleges. So this is one of the first documents I created, and I created it by asking my coworkers, what are the questions that people ask you all the time? And I wanted to like myth bust them because people go, "Oh, do the bodies ever move?" Or, my uncle said the bodies move, and it's like, no, the bodies don't move. Like that, whoever's telling you that, I mean, I've seen thousands of bodies and they don't move, not ever. Um, so that's what the Mortician Mythbusters is. It's me just really myth busting the most top questions people ask us. So what is embalming anyways, right? And they think like the next question, well, don't you remove all the internal organs when embalming? It's like, no, we don't. So if you want to see more of this, I recommend you requesting the slides. You can read it on your own because we're getting almost to the question part. What's the difference between cadaver and corpse? There is a difference, right? Casket, coffin, same thing between cadaver and corpse. There's a difference, and we'll see right now. Or people always ask, "Aren't you afraid?" And no, we're not. Or all morticians are gothic. That was one of the things. They think we just walk around and we drive hearses, and some of us do, and some of us do like are gothic, I guess. But we're like we don't fit a mold anymore. I mean, my last apprentice, um, she was Cinderella at Disneyland. So, that tells you like, you never know what we do or who we are, but we're out there helping everybody. So, and we don't fit a mold. So, we're not all gothic. And also the Mortician Mythbusters. What's the difference between embalming and autopsies? A lot of people confuse those two. Oh, well, you guys do the autopsies, right? And we're like, no, we don't do autopsies. I heard you guys bury them standing up. No, we don't bury people standing up. I mean, imagine how hard it would be to lift like, a 400-pound casket with a body in there to lift it up and then put it in. It's just logistically, it's a nightmare. So we don't do that. Can you catch things from handling deceased? Technically, yes. There's certain bacterial diseases that can be transferred, but for the most part, corpses are generally safe. And then I go on with some funeral facts, and these I won't get to, but I do want to show you something real quick. And these are just images of the industry, and I'll just finish on this. Just there we go. Casket versus coffin. You can see on top the coffin is more of the traditional like Dracula style container, and it's what we call is anthropoidal, meaning it's human shaped. So it's the shape of a human. The casket is more of a big luxury box container, and then that little plain pine box, that's just a simple pine box. You see the different vehicles we use. You see the evolution. I wanted to show kind of the carriages, because that's where they get the term coach. Sometimes the hearses are called coaches, and that's because at first it actually was a funeral coach, and they obviously evolved as cars evolved. What you see in the right corner is what we do, or actually do our removals in. We actually drive like a minivan. So sometimes you might be on the freeway and you're passing a minivan and you might not even know that there's bodies in there. This is a crematory retort. This is what a very high tech, you know, nice setup looks like. Those are the retorts that go up to like 1600 degrees. And then you see here, it's like a witness crematory. This is where people actually want to witness, as you see those people doing it, someone actually being cremated. And that's actually popular in a lot of different cultures, especially like Buddhist and Hindu culture, where they do witness cremations. A prep room. This is actually prep rooms that I worked in. And I put quotation room because if you look at that table that's only like 6 feet long and you kind of do like your mathematical dimensions in your head, you probably realize that this is not a room and more of a closet. And I think it was a closet at one time, but I embalmed in there. Then you see kind of a little better progression, right? Nice pink porcelain table. And then, oh, okay, yeah, there we go. That's more modern. That's kind of what we deal with on an everyday basis. And you see the embalming machines and you see the tables, a lot of stainless steel, shiny things. You see some embalming machines. This is pretty much what we use to inject the fluid. You see the fluid in the tank. Some tools of the trade. These are some examples of formaldehyde bottles, Champion Company. You see there, happy students. This is actually a historic photo because on the left you see Kaylee. She's having a good day. She's giving a thumbs up. And if you look on the right, that's actually me in mortuary school when I had hair. So that was the last known photo of me with hair. Then at the last slide, you see information and resources, a whole bunch of things that I thought would be helpful for you, things that I'm mentioning in this slide, and anything else that you can possibly gain knowledge and could be within these links. So I do encourage you that if you do um, get this PowerPoint, take a look at some of these things. They're very informative. And I'll go ahead and stop there because I probably hit my hour and we're limited on time.
Thank you so much, Gary. The last slide you shared, your email, we might have more questions than we have time for. Will you be okay if participants send you questions if we didn't have
Sure.
enough time? Okay. Thank
Sure.
you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, we do have a couple of questions from the audience. First question, it's embalming mandatory for burial and or cremation?
Yes. So the one thing about the military, it just depends. Like if they're active military and it's happening, while they're being in the service, it's usually taken care of by the Navy. There's a place in Florida, and if I'm not mistaken, that's where they do all the military embalmings, and it's done very procedurally. I mean, like how they say with military precision, that's how it's done, and so they do it very much that way to where they take care of it that way. Obviously, we do veterans. The older generations that have now aged and are dying. We do embalm them, and it's just like anything normal.
But how about non-veterans? It's embalming mandatory for general burial and cremation?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So a lot
okay.
of times people they'll still get buried and they'll go to the national cemeteries. So anybody, like any veteran, can come to any funeral home, and as long as they provide their discharge papers or DD 214, we could process them with any honors they reserve, which is usually either burial at a national cemetery. They also get a folded flag, and they also get certain discounts or uh, money that goes towards their headstone and their casket and things like that.
Okay. The question, how does creativity play into the role of funeral director or embalmer?
Okay. Well, that's because what we do is very much an art and a science. We like to call it science-based art because things like embalming, it can be very much detailed exactly how to do things every time, but since we're dealing with, a human remains, it changes. So it's very much just something that there's a lot of art to it, especially when you think about how we apply cosmetics and how we have to, like, sometimes the discoloration in people's skin and their tissue, and we have to make them back to restored to a natural process. So we even teach color theory. I mean, we teach people how to do hair. We teach people how to apply makeup. So there's an art to it, and I like to think the art is also just the process in which you do your embalming. It's not a you know, pen on paper kind of job. It's hands on, and everybody has their own technique, and everybody has their own philosophy, and so I see people. I work with a lot of different people. I see a lot of different techniques, and we're all artists in our own way.
Thank you, Gary. What is the embalming liquid made of? Does it come mixed, or is it part of your task to mix it as an embalmer?
It's a good question. Our primary fluids that we use is formaldehyde, right? We also use glutaraldehyde. In that bottles that I showed you, they're concentrated. So there's a certain amount of index of formaldehyde in each bottle. So we apply those into those tanks that are showing you, the machines. We necessarily dilute it. And we do have science, and this is the science part where we can mathematically figure out, okay, for certain bodies we need a certain percentage of formaldehyde in there, which is usually a 5%. So we have math that can tell us how much fluid of a certain index to put in a 3-gallon tank to get the desired formaldehyde index we need. So yeah, it's a good question. We do those bottles are small, but they contain a lot of formaldehyde that we dilute with water.
Thank you, Gary. Next question has multi-part. Okay, so if I would like to go into the green funeral field,
Mhm.
end of life composting, compositing, etc., is there a specific school to learn green burials? Is there a certificate for becoming a end of life composter?
So probably right at this point, and Lily, I gotta say, is one of my students, so she could ask me these questions anytime too. We don't have at this point. I don't know. Green burial is something. Green funeral is something that we just had laws passed recently that are allowing composting and hydrolyzation and things like that of remains. So it's kind of the unknown. I mean, that's something that I have yet to look into. But that could be something that students could take upon themselves. Most of the time, it's probably going to incorporate them working with the mortuary that does those does those kind of things. But that's a good question. Just remember too, green burials is not something new. It's been around for a long time, especially if you look at certain religious views, like talking about Jewish traditions and Muslim traditions. They bury green. They bury in pure wooden caskets or shrouds, right into the dirt with no metal, no embalming, no nothing, right in a shroud. That's green burial. Okay, so it's a new concept, but not really. It's a very ancient concept too.
Okay, another question from Lily, a student. How do I get ahead of this leash field, the green burial field, since it will be legal in California in 2026, 27? In other words, I would like a business ready to be open once it becomes legal in California.
Yeah, and I think that's something that everyone's trying to figure out right now. How? And I think the best way to do it is to find those that are like-minded. Ask the people that are doing it. You might have to do research in other states at first. And the same thing, like with hydrolyzation and composting, this has been done before. So it appears new to us now because now we're applying it to humans. But things like this have been done before in other aspects of, uh, you know, disposing of remains. So my advice would be to find out where this is done and ask them because chances are they figured it out somehow.
Thank you. Last question. Where does one start to pursue a career in pathology?
So pathology, it's kind of one of those things that is similar to mortuary science, where if you want to be a pathologist specifically, you have to go to a doctor school. You got to go to medical school. Now you can go pursue being an autopsy tech, and that's just a certification. It's not even a licensure. So the best thing to do is find internships. You could call up any autopsy company and they'll help you. One that used to offer internships was 1-800 Autopsy, and that's in LA here down in Southern California. Um, but a lot of people who get into forensics and autopsy and pathology, they start off at mortuary science because mortuary science kind of gives you is like one of the only footholds into our industry. So it's important in that way where you see a lot of people, they come through us first and then they make their way to pathology or the coroner's office or forensics. So I would say mortuary school because it would get you a background and a little footstep into whatever it is you want to do next.
Thank you so much, Gary. That's
Mhm.
the last question. I'm so glad that we're able to answer all the questions from the audience. Um, so, with that, I want to thank you very much, Gary, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with all of us. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. And to everyone in the audience, thank you for attending and for your thoughtful, engaging question. Your participation really added to the value of this session. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. I will be sending out a brief evaluation survey along with Gary's presentation slides and a link to today's recording. Your feedback is incredibly important to us, so please take a moment to share your thoughts and help us improve future programming. Thanks once again, everyone. Wishing you all a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.